Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is TCL 62's weekly sync for week 4. That doesn't sound right, but I think that is right. Um, I'll correct it if I'm wrong later. So yeah, we are right in the middle and in the thick of it at this point. Um, I think right off the bat, I'll hand it over to Grace and we can talk about demos and stuff for what we did for the last week. Grace, are you good? Maybe, maybe not.
I know she was having some camera issues, but I
Okay,
can't hear her either. So,
fair enough. Well, we'll
Can you
see
guys
if
hear me?
we. Oh, there you go.
yeah, there you go.
Okay, cool. So my phone just decided to totally die on me. And I have it hooked up to my tripod, and my audio and my camera are apparently not working for my phone. Um, anyway, who wants to kick us off for demos? Any volunteers?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, let's see. Hang on one second. Let me pull up. Yeah, so Hans and I worked on the filter feature this week. Didn't Thank you so much everyone for reviewing our code. We didn't commit it, so I'll just I will show you in my dev environment. Can y'all see? Should be able to see my VS Code.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so our task this week was to add a filter feature to the list page. So here we added, yeah, here we are on the list page, and if you search for an item, say like TL, every time you type in a letter, it will filter the data for any words that include those letters, consecutive letters. And then if you, yeah, if you enter in kind of something that doesn't match what's in the list, then we'll get this no matches message, and then you won't be able to type any further. And then when you do have text in the window, you'll see this X option, and that'll clear the data. I think that is all the features that we added. We can walk through the code. Let's see. Any questions before we move on to the code?
Not a question, but I do just want to, if you guys would like to go over it now or go over it later.
Yes. Yeah.
The acceptance criteria, I realized
Please.
after I reviewed it that one of the ACs was to add a form element, and I realized after I reviewed it that that wasn't done. But it was part of my recommendation for one of the features because
Yeah.
instead of using React to reset the form, you can just use pure HTML. And it's a lot easier that way. And I just wanted to bring that up because I know in my first couple PRs, just working on my own, I would have missed something like that too, because it's like, okay, everything works in React. That's really cool. And then I forget, like, I can do stuff in HTML as well. So that's something I wanted to point out.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We'll definitely take a look into that. I think we interpreted the AC as like adding a form, kind of like a form functionality, rather than like a form tag. So we can would you suggest, like, would you suggest us updating it to a form tag, like form element
I
for
would,
the project?
um,
Okay.
just because you'll need that for the reset button. And that way you can
Okay.
take away the dependency on React to clear the reset or use the actual reset functionality.
Oh, okay. Oh, like resetting the text.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, okay, okay. Cool.
Yeah,
We'll definitely do that.
Grace, I did see your suggestion there, and so I'm glad you brought that up. There was we had a little bit of confusion within that because we did see that the use of the word form within the acceptance criteria, and I definitely interpreted the use of the form element more as like a bigger input type, like like for what you'd see in a blog post input field, and so I kind of we sort of assumed like that you meant like the kind of broader like type of input to so yeah, we can totally, that was just a misinterpretation on our part. We did see that in there, so we can definitely add that before we merge, no problem.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that's totally okay. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it. Just to give an alternative instead of, I really just want to make sure that you guys remember to find alternative options rather than
Yeah.
using React for everything right away. Because
Yeah.
like I've been guilty of that myself.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, appreciate it. We'll definitely get that fixed and then resubmit.
I'll make
Okay.
one note on that, and then we can
Yes.
stop talking about it. But so this is the kind of thing that we want to be paying attention to when we go through the issues and the assignment. As this is actually a pretty common error that happens a lot in real life too with developers and either more the seniors on the team or the product owners or whoever. The word form was in there. Now in this case, someone's looking explicitly for a form tag as opposed to just sort of like the more esoteric version of form. And as you guys pointed out, it's kind of open to interpretation a little bit at the moment. So as you roll through an issue, it's best to try and like tease those things out and then get clarity on them ahead of time. So if we if we go like, oh, this says form here, do we mean a literal form or do we just mean like, and those are the types of questions we want to be on the lookout for.
For sure.
And then we can, try and get ahead of them. And then you sort of have to decide. I think, when I went through and I approved it, and then Grace said something, I was like, yeah, darn it. I even missed that too. Because it looks like it works and it's, fine. And that might be okay in some situations. And in other situations, people are going to be like, no, actually, we really need a form here. And we have a reason for it. And that's the kind of thing to watch out for. So when we do planning later, we'll just be on the lookout for those types of things. Okay.
Cool.
I'm shutting up.
Cool. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Question? I don't know if Magda and I have like a reference for what you all are talking about because I can't see like a.
Oh my bad.
Like what exactly is no worries.
We said we were going to do code, and then we started talking about code before we looked at code.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So here's the PR. Well, yeah. Here's our PR. Here's the acceptance criteria, and it says like create a form, right? And so this is I think Hans and I kind of interpreted this as like it could be kind of a form, not necessarily like using the form tag, but we kind of interpreted it as like kind of a form functionality. So instead we used, let me go into we used an input tag instead of a form tag. This is not the correct way of code. Let's go here. Go here. Let's see, list. And yeah, so we instead used a label tag instead of a form tag. But we're gonna go back and update that. So so we could walk through the code. Let's see. So again, we used label field for our text, our input text box input field. And then we have a conditional statement saying if there is input, then show the X button, which will clear the text field. And then here, another conditional for if our text is valid, so we have a function that if it's valid, if it has a match, then we'll show the data that matches. Otherwise, we'll show this no matches message. And let's see. Yeah, so kind of working backwards here. Yeah, here's our state. We have a state for the input, the data that appears, that is shown with any matches. Again, that is valid state. And then our search length, which we use in our in one of our use effects. So determining what message, what we show below the search box. So in this use effect, it's anytime the search data, anytime the search data updates, then we'll kind of run these functions. And that'll determine what message shows below the search box. And let's see, yeah, and then here's our other event handlers where we're updating the input state. And this use effect filters out our data based on the input, the user input. I think those were the big changes that we made. Yeah, any questions?
No.
Cool. Okay, I will stop sharing now.
All right. Thanks, guys. Let's see. Arch and Magna, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah. Magda, do you have a
Yes.
preference? Do you want to share screen, or I can too?
I can share screen.
Sure.
Yes. Okay. Do you see my my code?
Yeah, we see it.
Okay. So the task what we had to do with Archa this week, it was 1 second. It was the task that when the user wants to join the existing list. So what we had to do in this task, we had to too early to talk. Okay. So the first thing what we had to do, we had to update the Firebase, and in Firebase we create the function, and we create the function get existing list. And what does the function do? So the function actually first take the argument list ID, and first we check if the list we really have the list ID. If we don't have the list ID, we throw the error that the list ID is missing or is empty. And otherwise, we just use the collection from the database, and can you help me?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. So we're using some like inbuilt Firebase functions here, like get docs, and that will basically check if there's anything in that collection. So the collection is like currently we're all using the collection, my test list, that's the name of the collection, right? And then if it returns like .empty is an inbuilt property in Firestore. So if it is basically saying it's empty, then we know that there's nothing in there. If it's not empty rather, and then if it is empty, then we know that. So we're essentially trying to store that as a Boolean
Yes.
from this function, yeah. And so this function is what we use then in the home component. So
Yes. And in the home components, we import the function get existing list, and after that we create the use states for existing token and for the messages, and after that we also we create the form, and in this form we have a label existing token, and the user is and we create the input, and in the input the user is able to type the token that wants to join the list. So in this we have a two function, handle submit and handle token change, and this function
yeah, I think that, yeah, and the handle token change, I know that the mentors, you all gave some suggestions so that we can update that, because currently it's
I already did.
oh,
like,
you
not
update.
Everything.
Oh, great,
Like,
yeah.
No, sorry, I didn't update this handle token change. Sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, I was like, okay, yeah, that looks the same. Yeah. Yeah, so but it is essentially very similar to the form Jenny and I worked on last week. It's essentially just storing as a state whatever input the user puts in, whatever text they type in, and then on submit, it'll submit that to that function we just described to you, where it queries Firebase to see if that exists or not. And then the status state we set, you can see on the bottom, similar to when you're trying to add an item, it'll essentially show a message whether, well, if it exists, it will just navigate you to that page. And if it doesn't exist, it'll show you a message saying, hey, that list doesn't exist.
And it looks like I forgot to do the demo, so let's do the demo now.
It's okay, we just mixed up the order here.
Okay, so we are on a home page, and in a home page, user is able to create a new list. So it was a task before a week ago, or the user is able to click the existing list. So when we're going to click on existing list, the user is able to see the shopping list.
And then Magda, can you show them what happens if we put a list that doesn't exist?
For sure. I just click the token. We have pancake, and the list doesn't exist, and we have an error message. The list doesn't exist. That's it.
Awesome.
Any questions?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks for sharing screen like that.
Awesome job, everyone. I think next is Jeremiah with the pair programming learning module.
Jeremiah, you ready? You're muted.
Yes, I am
Sweet.
opening up the slideshow.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Okay. And then is this visible to everyone?
Looks good.
Sure
Okay.
is.
Okay, so this week the learning module is on pair programming. TCL intentionally sets it like a few weeks after the program starts, so that way you get some like tabula rasa like experience with it before being told like how it's supposed to go. And so we're gonna see if the way that they describe it matches up with the experience everyone's had so far. I think I actually started kind of far back. Yeah. Okay. So pair programming is an exercise where you work with one other person to pair up and work on a coding challenge together. There are other forms of it where you do with more people called mob programming. But it can be an efficient way to get something done and then to also grow as a developer. And there are a few things that you should have in mind when you are like participating in it. So try to have the beginner's mind. So your way of solving a problem isn't the only way. It might also not be the best way. So embrace doubt and possibility. It's not necessarily about teaching or mentorship. So um, it's not always about being like the more experienced developer. Um, and let's see, it's an opportunity to learn. So whether or not you are the like navigator or the coder, you're gonna have chances to see how other people think and how they work through problems, which can be helpful. And there are some things that you should have in mind, regardless of like which role you're in. So, as the driver, the person who's actually writing the code, seek agreement before proceeding. So don't just like code out the problem, without talking to your navigator about it. So that way you're both on the same page about like where you're going. And then as the navigator, make sure that you're not like being I guess like the boss because you're both equals in the situation. So you want to ask, don't tell. So pair programming is when two developers sit together in front of a computer and take turns writing code using just one keyboard. There are a few ways to do it. There's sharing the screen, which is probably like the easiest and the most common way to do it since we're all virtual. But I've seen probably Hans the most, but like sharing the live share from VS Code is a really nice way to do it. So that way you can like see and interact with the code uh as both people and kind of look at the things that you want to look at. Um if you're doing it in real life, you might have one monitor, you might have two monitors that are showing the same code. But the point is that there's only one person who's doing the coding. So that's the driver. They control the keyboard and they're responsible for writing the code that needs to be done to complete the task. And their goal is to try to talk about what they're thinking about as they're coding. So that way, talking through problem solving is helpful because it's like when you're reading through an essay or that kind of thing, it can help you notice either like errors in logic or some things that don't go like A to B to C. And then the navigator, since they're not actually like focusing on the specific like line by line code, they can pay attention to what the code is doing and they can look at what the driver is writing. They can give tips or guidance uh, because they also don't have the pressure of like someone watching them, right? And seeing how their brain works. So they can also think about like where you're going, as opposed to just where you are. so they can try to think ahead, and then they also act as a sounding board for the driver. So they're the one who's like listening to what the thinking process is, and there's someone who you can bounce ideas off of. And then again, yeah, they have a bird's eye view of the code, so they get to look at all of it, not just like the line by line where you're at the moment. And then there are a lot of tools out there that make doing this nice when you are working remotely. But it doesn't really take that complex of a setup. Like we said, just like screen sharing is a pretty easy way to do it. So two developers hop on a call in video or screen share. And then the driver shares the screen and codes while the navigator provides feedback and asks questions. The driver pushes the code to a remote repo and navigator pulls the code down locally. Or if you're using live share, then it's always like the same code either way. And then the driver and navigator swap roles and start back to at step one. So it's kind of like this cyclical thing where both people are doing both roles. I know when I went through the program, my partner and I, whoever I was paired up with for the week, usually just did it week by week. So we didn't do it on one problem. We did it on like, okay, last time you were the navigator and I was the driver, so we'll swap so that way we both get that practice. But you can do it however you want. And yeah, so how does that align with everyone's pair programming experience so far? Does that match up? Is it different?
In my experience so far, yeah, some of it has matched up. I think the roles were less defined. I think it was more the driver being more of a low level kind of point of view versus the navigator being more of a bird's eye view. I think it was more just kind of a shared approach, yeah, just like kind of figuring out the code as we went along.
Mm.
And I think there was more kind of each session we would switch off, share, I guess, or sharing screen. So it was less about like the issue, going by the issue versus like every time we met up, we
Yeah, session by
rotate.
session.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with Jenny that I don't think we've been working with defined roles, so it's just been more of a informal agreement of how to kind of navigate working together. So probably we've been just leaning a little bit more on general knowledge of collaborating on something rather than this clearly defined, which I appreciate the specific roles because it helps just make it more explicit for people. And yeah, I actually I learned about these roles and when I did pair programming and coding bootcamp and didn't really remember them, so it's good to get a refresher.
I think a part of it too is probably depending on like when I've listened to other people give this presentation, they talk a lot about like if one of the people is a senior dev and like they either have a tendency to, if they're the driver, to just like code out the problem because they know the way it should go, or they don't have to like learn as much on the way to the solution. So if you're both closer to equals in terms of like where you're at learning about the repo, like if you're both spending time looking at the Firestore docs and that kind of thing, then looking ahead is kind of harder. But you can have that opportunity to like, okay, I think we are going to have to use a function from Firestore. I don't know which one it is exactly. While they're working on this, I can kind of like look ahead at this kind of thing, even if you don't exactly know like where you're going on the problem solving journey.
I like that. Yeah, it seems that would be like increase efficiency in like moving the code along.
And then, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just to kind of like add on to what folks are saying. I was like there's part of the value that I've found for me, especially like most kind of recently, was, you know, I went into this having looked at this most recent week, having looked at the task and having like an idea in my head of how I already, you know, an approach of my own that I wanted to solve. But Jenny took the keyboard first, and her approach was different and more efficient than mine, and honestly, like better. But you know, being able to kind of combine both of our like individual like ideas of how to tackle the problem made it go like super fast, and we I think came up with a pretty decent solution, like without much like, you know, much without much troubleshooting or like necessary research and stuff. So just kind of having like, you know, the outside approach to doing something really like increased the efficiency, but also like the learning experience. You know, at least for me on my end, I thought it was really a good time this week and weeks past as well.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I really like seeing the way that other people solve problems, especially when it's like something that I already spent time on. So, and then I'll share the slides later, and there's like more resources on, you know, pair programming and how you can try to either make it more efficient or make it like a better experience for like learning for yourself and that kind of thing. And that is it for that learning module. And then I think I pass it back to Lyle.
Yep. So awesome. I want to start off by saying y'all are doing an excellent job. The code is all, you know, looking good. We've got a couple of notes on there, but you guys are humming right along and doing a great job. We're accumulating a little bit of technical debt at the moment, and deliverables are a little late, which just means that you guys are acting like absolute professionals right now. So good job. That being said, we have 2 items that I want to go in and I want to touch on first before we get into our proper planning session. Number 1 is we have the add item issue is still something we might want to take care of. So let me actually share my screen here real quick. Can you guys see my screen now?
Yep.
Yes,
Yeah.
cool. All right, great. So on this one, which I neglected to mention earlier, where did I say that? Nope, it was this one. Right here. Okay, cool. So this is the thing that we need to get in here to address. Now I dropped this on the one pull request. I don't think it actually matters where this gets pulled in. At some point this needs to happen, which is that we need to start passing with the typo fixed. We need to start passing the list token into the route here so that the that add item page works. And we're gonna get there one way or the other. I dropped it on this PR. It doesn't really matter. We'll want to figure out how to address that going forward. The other one was the form tag thing that we just talked about, which we could again update in that PR and get that, you know, kind of merged in and taken care of. Both of these things are examples of what I would call technical debt. So we either missed something or we didn't think about something, or, you know, we ran around and ran into a new edge case that just came up that we didn't account for in the past, or quite frankly, we took shortcuts because we needed to make a deadline. And so we didn't do things the right way, or we didn't get testing or something else in there, right? This stuff happens. It happens a lot. So the question kind of always becomes, well, what do you do to deal with it as you go? You will see there's basically 2 options. You can try and sneak in updates to your technical debt as you go, pad them into the work that you're trying to do, tack them onto existing PRs or existing stories and pieces of work, or you can separate them out, those updates, those cleanup tasks, the adding the scaffolding around. You can make those separate GitHub issues, separate pull requests that you want to handle. The problem is on most teams that tends to go with a lot of extra process. So there's always a balancing act between, do I sneak in a little bit of padding work into the work I'm already doing, or do I create new pieces of work to address the stuff that we ended up going. Every team struggles with this out there in the world. I don't think anybody does a perfect job of handling their technical debt they accumulate. And it's definitely a conversation that you'll probably have over and over and over and over again is, kind of how do we address that stuff as we go forward. So I bring up these two things because as we talk about planning for the issues coming up, we'll want to decide if we want to address those in the existing PRs potentially, or if we want to catch them and add them in as part of the work that we have coming up. I'm going to say, let's not worry about adding in new issues to cover for things that we missed in the past, things like bugs or, news stories at the moment. Towards the end, the last couple of weeks, we'll have a little bit more time to do styling and some of this other stuff. But if there are additional cleanup tasks that we just can't get to, we can pad them in there. But for doing basic functionality, we do need to get the add item thing fixed in there for sure. Kind of going forward. Okay, so that's all I was just saying on that. I did last cohort do a office hours where I specifically focused on talking about bugs and how to write them up. And a template kind of thing, which we don't really have as part of our lesson plan. But if anybody wants to do that talk later, we can talk about that as well. Okay, so questions on any of that rambling that I just said before we get into the actual issues of the week?
I was just going to suggest that, Jenny, if you're open to it, maybe you and I can close the loop on this add item issue since it was our original ticket sometime this week.
Yeah, I think if either or both of us add that's just pass that list token as a prop, that'll fix it. So I don't maybe we could both add it into our code just to cover our bases. I mean, yeah, depending on who put, I don't know if you already pushed your code or
no. We haven't pushed ours yet.
Okay.
I guess I was just a little curious to see where what broke it in the first place. I think there's something about a merge somewhere in a merge that something got because I think we had handled it in a different way in our code. We didn't have anything being passed via routes. But yeah, I'm happy to just look into it on my own too. That's chill.
And then on a similar note, since y'all are gonna be taking care of that, do you want me to just kind of go ahead and fix that form acceptance criteria and have that before we just push that up before we merge it?
That's probably easiest. I don't know if you need to do anything else literally other than wrap the stuff in a form.
Okay.
You could try messing with the submit button behavior default stuff, but maybe it's just in the form tags, probably all we really need there.
Okay.
Okay. So as far as the question about what happened, so we had two PRs here that were going to go into main from last week. So this is the one where we added the list token and we put it in here. And then there's this one where we touched this spot in the file. So note that here we actually show an update. And we didn't actually change the content of this tag. Or no, we did. Okay. So sorry. Yeah, that got merged in. So this one merged, then this one merged, but this change got overwritten. So what I'm guessing happened is when the pull came to update this branch with the changes from this one, there was a merge conflict and we chose pick right because all the rest of this looked correct and was the new stuff, but this last line probably just got overlooked as it got merged. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's fun with merge conflicts. This happens when we touch the same file. So anyway,
how could we have avoided that? Was that the code on the right left, was that already committed?
So what'll have happened was this one got merged into main first, and then this one did. So GitHub should have stopped you if you updated a file that got updated also. So if you had changes on the same line. So at some point we had to resolve this conflict. So I don't know if that happened in the UI or if that happened if like we did a git pull. So does anyone remember what happened here? Did we do a git pull of main and then get a conflict resolution? At some point that had to have happened.
My brain, as turns out, is made out of vanilla pudding. I should have disclosed this in my Collab Lab application materials. That being said, I seem to remember there being a merge conflict when I was told to go ahead and click merge on that branch. And I don't exactly remember my resolution for it, but I think that this is actually on me now that we're pointing out the root of it. So
it's all good. This stuff happens, especially when it's a one-liner that's relatively subtle like that. It's
Yeah,
an easy
it's
thing to
pretty
miss.
subtle.
Yeah. Like I said, this is not going to be the last time you run into this problem, I promise you. So in any case, sounds like that's what happened. So easy thing to recover from. It's just the one-liner just needs to get put back. It's just where do we want to squeeze in that change as we go forward. Okay. We have a little bit more noodling on to do before we actually talk about how to assign that stuff out. So let's look at the upcoming stuff for the week. So first thing, project brief. So the teams for this week is going to be Jenny and Magda and Hans and Archa. Make sure that I'm counting right. Yep. Okay. So we have two. The two issues for this week are actually relatively different. The first one is going to be very light on details, should be the more straightforward and simple one, but it's open-ended. So it allows you to add a little bit of creativity in there and potentially blow yourself up if you're not careful, but mostly just, kind of more of a creative one. And then our other one has a lot more concrete implementation details and a little bit more stuff to do on it as well. So diving into those, we can think about which one we want to kind of tackle. As a user, I want to see a welcoming prompt to add my first item if my list is empty to help me get oriented on how the app works. When a user starts a new list, they need a little guidance on how to get started. Think through what you'd want to see as a user and make some intentional user experience decisions that will guide our users in confidently adding their very first item. So again, you kind of decide what we need to do here to help people out. The acceptance criteria is the list view when there are no items to display. So typically when we've created a new list, should show a prompt, a button, and potentially for the user to add to their first item. It sounds simple. Again, this wireframe is a little short on the welcoming part of the story, but otherwise is functionally complete for the purposes of the AC. So go over here and we show the very simple, the very short, here's a button, list is empty message, go along. That's really all you need to do. But that text is bland and boring, and now we get to make a decision here about, do we want to do anything else? And it's intentionally open-ended, right? If you're here as a user and you're just landing for the first time, and this is an important mindset to try and think about, is like, you want to go for sort of the least common denominator in terms of your user. And if they absolutely knew nothing getting in here, would they be able to figure out what's going on and what they need to do? Right. So just, kind of stuff to think about. And then we will update this and go. So it could take 5 minutes, could take a little more deciding if you wanted to make this fancier in some way. The other issue. As a user, I want to mark an item on my shopping list as purchased so that the app can learn how often I buy different items. Users need a UI that allows them to mark their items as purchased so that they can track what on their list they want to do and do not need to buy. The AC here is the list item component renders a checkbox. In particular, if we want a checkbox here, check. Checking off the item in the UI also updates the date last purchased and the total purchased properties on the corresponding Firestore document. So we have two fields we need to update. The item is shown as checked for 24 hours after the purchase date is made. We'll assume the user does not need to buy the item again for at least 1 day. And then after the 24 hours, the item unchecks itself so that the user can buy it again. The update item function in Firebase has been filled out and sends updates to the Firestore database when an item is checked or unchecked. So we should be able to go to the Firebase data store in the console and look at it and see these properties get reflected out there. While you will need to update multiple parts of the Firestore document for this feature, those two fields, do not worry about the date next purchased yet. This will be addressed in a future issue. So we will be talking about like showing you when you should click the checkbox, but we're not going to deal with that right now. And then you can use Firestore console to test that this feature is working correctly by manipulating the value of the date last purchased. So you could actually, if you wanted to screw around here, literally edit the data in Firestore and see that it's doing its job. Which is like, because you don't want to wait 24 hours after updating your test data to see it go. Okay, so let's start out by seeing if between our two teams here, anybody has a particular desire to pick up one or the other of those stories.
I'd be down to do 8 if Hans, you're open for that.
I was hoping you'd say that.
Cool.
Awesome.
Arguments, rebuttals from the other side. You two good with doing the user experience-y story?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, which one which one are we?
So Hans and Archer were talking about updating the Firestore stuff, date last purchase and
Okay.
date total purchase when we click the checkbox. And then this one is you're now on a empty list page. We need to show you something nice in the UI to say, hey, here's what you do. Click this button and get rolling.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds fine.
Cool. Alrighty. So I will, let's just spawn here. So pick up that. It's you.
And just to clarify on the previous topic, before going forward, I'm gonna fix that form thing, and I'm sorry, Archa and Jenny are gonna fix the add item bug. Is that correct? Or
that
Yeah, I can just do that add item thing on my own.
Okay.
Since it's really simple, unless Jenny, you want to, I'm down for it.
okay, cool. Just wanted to just make sure I got clear clarification on that. Appreciate it.
And is that at the same time that we're also addressing the form thing? Both those things happen in the same pass then? Did I catch that right?
My thinking was I was going to address the form issue and push that change up to the current branch because it's not yet merged off that pull request. So I just push the branch and then merge the pull request.
Okay.
And then I can also update the add list thing in Magda and I's open branch stuff. That's not finished.
Perfect.
Cool.
And then I think we'll be all set. Okay. So now that we've gotten some tactical things taken care of, one of these is very open-ended. One of these is very particular. Do we have questions about either one of these stories? No. Seems straightforward. Okay. Any other questions before we wrap up? We've got a few extra minutes today. We're on time. Good job.
Before we all head out, does anyone have a preference for office hours instead of me spinning with a doodle?
What are the options of available days and time ranges?
Let me see. I should be free all week. Let me double check that before I say the wrong thing.
Also, I did actually have a question about the issue 8.
Sure.
I'm looking at the third acceptance criteria, and it's saying the item is shown as checked for 24 hours and it unchecks itself. is just I found it to be kind of a strange way to interact with a list, that it unchecks itself rather than is removed from the list. Is that related to something in the whole build out? Like just intuitively, when you use any sort of list app on your phone, check something off, it's not gonna reappear after a day. Or is that related to some bigger picture thing? So we should just leave that be, even though personally as a user, I find that very confusing. If I go back to the grocery store the next week and I just bought a bottle of ketchup and I'm like, oh, it's there again. I need it again.
It's a good question. Before we do that, Grace, did you want to finish? Sorry, I realized we almost got rolling before we finished talking about office hours.
No, that's good. So office hours, I'm free anywhere between 5 p.m. Pacific to 8 p.m. Pacific, all week.
Okay. Do we want to follow up in Slack, or do we want to try and call it here?
I can create a thread in Slack, that's fine.
Okay, cool. So the way I interpret this is I just got home from the store, I pull up the app and I go, great, I bought these 3 things and I'm gonna tap them off. The minimum then, sort of 24 hours will be that these are now checkable again. So when I check them first, they go checked and they, show I've already purchased, that kind of thing. But then I don't know, maybe I just love drinking milk and chugged my whole gallon by the next day. It'll at least present me the option to check that off again. In the future, what's going to happen is we are also going to add the frequency. So this is part of the date next purchased. That was sort of saying, hey, don't worry about that at the moment as a part of the AC for this story. And what that's going to do is it's going to set, kind of the 72 or the whatever hours after that. We will eventually want the list to kind of be sorted by date that's, most prudent, I believe. Let me look at that. So as a user, I want to be alerted when empty. That's not it. As I want to be computed at the time I purchased it recorded. So we're going to fill that out, that next purchased item that we just talked about, that date. As a user, I want to be able to delete items from my shopping list. And then number 12, as a user, I want to view my list in order of how soon I am likely to need to buy each of them again. So the list is going to be sorted when we're done. It'll be checkable at any point after the first 24 hours, and then it will float to the top of the list as it should be close to actually purchasing it again. So I guess if you wanted to get ahead of your list or something, right? You're at the store and be like, it's not quite time yet, but I'm going to buy more of it anyway. It'll at least be an option for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Well, so then just so that I'm clear then as well, this, I know that in one of the previous add item things, it was you would select how likely you're going to buy this again within the next 7 days, 14 days, 30 days. Is this functionality happening unrelated to that for now?
Unrelated to that for now. So that'll eventually be that value here, that date next purchased. That's what those 2 things are pointing at. This is the precursor to making that useful, which is to say that when I clicked it, I actually bought it today. So everything else needs to be downstream of that whole happening.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the total purchases keep tracking with total purposes, unrelated to dates, but that kind of thing. So you'll calculate the next purchased after your date last purchased. But for now, we need the date last purchased to take care of the checkbox behavior at a minimum. Cool. Good question. Any others while we're sitting here looking at these stories? Cool. Awesome. We have a plan. We have stories. We have good work. Everything's in progress. App's in shape, seems to be deploying well. Teams seem to be working together. Keep that up and things are going to start going well. One other thing, so we do have a UX story in here. While you're chewing on that one in particular, I would also start to think about the overall user experience and look and feel that we want the app to have at the end of the project. So as you see here, we just talked about kind of the next several issues that are leading up. Week 13 or issue 13, when we get to the last 2 weeks here, I want the app to look professional and welcoming. This is going to be a very open-ended thing that everybody's going to participate in. We're going to kind of take 2 weeks to plot out adding styling, adding, look and feel stuff, any kind of polish or other stuff we want to add. So this is kind of like a beachhead story into thinking about those types of things. So if you wanted to, get out a little bit of, your thinking in front of that, now is probably the time to start chewing on that as well. This is to say that there's minimum AC in there, but the AC itself is open-ended. So if you wanted to add in some stuff related to what you think it might be in the future, this would be a time to exercise that. Okay. Otherwise, I will let everybody go. Thanks. I'll get this recording. I think I need to get the other recording up too. But we will get that out shortly.
I have one last quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
Just in terms of the workflow and everything that we're doing here, I'm noticing that the testing that we're doing is all kind of like manual. Like we're just kind of going through and seeing like, does this work as anticipated and stuff. In the past though, when in my code school, we had to have a test suite for everything where we would actually like for JavaScript things, we would use Jest. For Ruby, we'd use RSpec to actually write an automated test to say like, this is the expected functionality, this is what we're getting. And I know we don't here, and we also don't have a ton of time each week. We're only supposed to be doing like around 5 hours each week, which after the sync calls leaves like 4 hours for coding. Are we just not gonna worry about that for the purposes of this project and just kind of stick with manual testing, or are we gonna introduce a testing suite at some point?
No, you're correct. We are not doing any testing on purpose.
Okay.
At this point, because it is a bunch of extra time that we want to focus on the collaboration part of this process and not quite so much on the technical completeness of the project. The goal is still to use the collaboration part to be technically complete, as much as far as AC is concerned. But this isn't something that we need to be battle tested and, super going into production stuff. And every single organization on the planet has a different attitude towards testing. And so it will be highly individualized to the environment that you wind up in as to what kind of testing people care about, how they measure it, what level of effort they think is appropriate to put into it, how they balance with QA testing and manual testing and, all that other stuff. It is an entire can of worms and a whole huge thing. It's very, very important, but it gets out of scope for what we want to focus on here pretty quickly. And it's hard to do in front end stuff anyway. Just gets a little bit trickier. So yeah, like you said, Grace is like, there's dedicated QA. That's a luxury if you have it, or it's obnoxious if you have it, depending on your perspective on that kind of thing. But yeah, there's just different ways to approach it. So the whole other rambling tangent I can go into, lots of opinions on that if we want to book in that in different office hours at some point. So okay, but yeah, it's a good question. We're ignoring it. TLDR. Anything else? All right. Thanks, everybody. Have an excellent week. See you in Slack.
Thanks.